Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve,
I'm Marty. How's it going?
and we both grow aquaponically. We both grow cannabis aquaponically. Both been doing it for quite a while now, and we have a lot to share with you guys. So, Marty, why don't you tell us how your last week has been?
Well, my last week has been on vacation, so that's been nice. I'm actually down in Southern California right now, and so my brother is taking care of my system at home, but luckily there's not really too much to do. Pretty much just feed the fish and make sure the drains are running. A couple more things because we have some clones running in the aquaponic system right now for you guys following around on YouTube. So we had our first I think 4 of them sprout roots in the last couple of days while I've been gone, so that's been very exciting. And then he takes a couple pictures for me every few days so that I can keep posting updates and stuff like that. And everything seems to be going pretty good there, and having a good time down here, so all that's been good. How's you get dug out from all your snow over there?
Yeah, so in the last week, yesterday we had quite a blizzard. We were supposed to get 3 to 6 inches, and we ended up getting about 2 feet of snow here in a full-blown blizzard. So it made getting my passport and my visas all straightened out to get down to Jamaica next on Sunday a little bit much trickier than it was supposed to be this week, but it all got sorted out today. So it took till the end of the week, but we got everything done on time. So, but yeah, I'll be having dinner in Jamaica on Sunday night, so that'll be great. And I've just been getting everything ready to be easier to maintain for my girlfriend and a friend of mine, or my roommate, are going to take care of my plants while I'm gone. So yeah, it'll be really nice. And I gave them a camera so they can take pictures, and hopefully they'll have some updates too, and I'll be able to post those even though I won't be up to see them. But yeah, we'll starting next week, I'll be in Jamaica for all the future episodes for at least the next 3 months until basically July.
Yeah. How long is your flight down there?
So I have a 3-hour flight to Dallas and a 4-hour flight to Jamaica, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
No, not at all. It's like 2 good books, you know.
Right. Sounds good. What do you got going on in the growing right now? I was watching your videos. You got some of them. You're probably getting ready to start flowering, right?
Yeah, so I have a whole set of. Today I'm going to do a grow room update. I've been meaning to do that. I've just been scrambling trying to get everything ready for leave. Originally it was going to be for a week, then it turned into a month, and then now it's 3 months. And it went from 1 farm to 3 farms in a month because everything's kind of working out as well as it could work out at the moment down there. So I can't complain. So it just means that I need to be ready to not be in the US for significantly longer than I originally thought. So that requires like dropping my cat off at a friend's house and paying rent for 3 months and just taking care of a bunch of stuff and
Right.
all that.
Sounds exciting though, man.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited. But yeah, so down in the grow right now I have just my normal regular production plants. I run about 2 per strain. I have a 24 plant count. Or not 24, 48 plant count. My roommate has a 24 plant count. I have a 48. And just renewed mine actually 3 days ago. And actually have celiac disease. And I twisted my sacrum inside my pelvis last year. And I slipped and fell, and my back is still not right from that. But thankfully I can walk. I couldn't walk for 2 months, so I'm just super grateful that I'm at the spot I'm at. But so I have a couple of different strains. I have 2 others that I'm just going to try out one cut of for now and see how they do. And I've just been whacking them back and juicing them, the mothers, which is really nice. If you guys don't know about juicing, juicing is a great way to get some extra CBDs and extra cannabinoids into your system. CBD is produced primarily in veg state, or heavily in veg state, so you can still get a lot of medical benefit from just throwing it in your regular smoothies. So I have a couple of those. I'm gonna end up chucking probably 2 or 3 of those because in the some strains end up a little lankier in the aquaponics. Some of them just stayed perfectly normal. My bubble gum is just getting really lanky, and I don't know if I'm going to keep it much longer. Probably just going to flower out that mother. But the exciting one is I actually have a couple of different crosses of Woo 5 and ACDC. And I'm trying to work on like a really, really, really heavy strain of CBD and THC, and it's like a little program I've been working on for about 2 years. And I have 2 decent strains. I have one mother down there that's just phenomenal. She's a seedling, and she's about a month old. She's about this tall, about that tall, and just super tabled out. I mean, just flat, perfect for indoor growing, and it's a super heavy, deep CBD strain. So I'm going to flower out one of the clones, send out the bud, see what it comes back as, and hopefully we have something good, because the structure on that plant is just amazing. And if that ends up, all of the plants that went into it were really tested out really well. So I'm hoping, but you never know. That's part of the phenome hunt. But I have 4 of those that I cracked, and I'm going to keep 1 or 2 as my CBD production strains, and then I'm going to end up giving those to my girlfriend who has a son who needs them. And she works up at a co-op, and she's working on a bunch of stuff on her own. The other cool thing is she's been working on a method of increasing production of a particular cannabinoid that I won't mention yet, without her permission. But she's really gotten onto something with a particular cannabinoid, and part of the process involves plants, and all of the plants were in aquaponics. So that'll be really exciting. We're just waiting. We actually just applied yesterday for an official R&D license to get the 36 plant R&D license through Colorado. And I just got the email yesterday from the girl up at CU that's involved with the genetics program to help. We're gonna be in touch with her about all this. So that's something else that we're kind of working on that I can't talk much more about other than that. But that'll be exciting to see the results of.
Well, that kind of ties in a little bit with some of the recent changes that have come in with the CBD on the federal level. I don't know if you saw the FDA coming out with their ruling that essentially all CBD oils and extracts are now, basically, I don't remember what classification it is, but basically illegal on the federal level, even without THC now, whereas before there was, at least a gray area that a lot of people were fitting into. And so now, because the FDA is testing CBD, it is being classified as illegal again, because you can't sell anything that's currently being tested and not FDA approved. So any thoughts on that, other than it sucks?
I mean, I get that they're doing the whole trying to prevent people from selling snake oil, because the US has a long history of doing all that. But at the same time, it's like, this isn't up for debate anymore. Like, there's so many YouTube videos of people being like instantly stopping their seizures, people that have, you have parent testimonials of how much it's helped autistic children, all different kinds of stuff, not just cancer and not just seizures. There's a really, really, really good documented case of a woman who has a son who was very self-destructive. He hit himself a lot and
Saw that one too. Yep.
And slap himself, and he takes cannabis oil. The kid's like he's in school now, and he was basically like inaudible, but he can talk, he can have sentences, he can learn, he's communicating with his parents. Can you imagine not being able to communicate with your child and then suddenly being able to communicate with them? That's the best gift you could give someone in the world. You know what I mean?
And then being put in jail for treating it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the sad part of the story.
It's completely insane.
Right. And I think even more, like, obviously the YouTube videos and stuff are great where you can see it happen, but obviously you can have ridiculous people out there that'll be like, oh, well, they could just fake it and then stop, and who knows what they're really taking. It could still be snake oil. So obviously you have those people. I'm I'm not one of them. Obviously, I believe in it. And but on top of that, you have a number of people that that really would be dead if it
Oh
wasn't
yeah, for sure.
right. Like you have people that are walking around talking perfectly healthy that Western medicine said you have, you know, months to live. There's nothing we can do for you. Chemo didn't work. Blah blah blah. So I think beyond that, I mean, there is no more like hard proof that, you know, than talking to somebody that should be dead who is still alive because of what they took. Like ultimately, to me, like what more question can you have at that point? And there's
Yeah,
a number of people that have medical records that say, you know, you should
yeah,
die, and then they go back in for their next checkup, and oh, this is a little bit better. We don't know what's going on. You know, there's even doctors' notes that like with question marks on them. You know,
sure.
like what is happening here? So you know, I definitely think that while there is an overwhelming amount of stuff on YouTube that you can go look at, if you don't believe that, go look at the medical records of the people that should be dead that are still alive. For all you conspiracy theorists out there, go check on that because you can't really argue with that stuff. Those people would be dead without it. They took it, and now they're better. So there's plenty of examples of those too.
Yeah, I have a friend up in Fort Collins who has cancer that's like slowly spreading through her body, and she was told 6 years ago that she had 2 years to live, and she's been taking cannabis oil every day, and that was 6 years ago.
Right.
So you tell me, you know, even if it's not going to complete, and it doesn't completely cure everyone, you know, but it'll, even if it gives you a few more years, that's a few more years she has with her kids, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, that's all you could ask for, you know, in that kind of situation, and that's
Well,
why
and the
some
quality of life is going to be way better too. You know, she's going to be able to eat. She's not going to be throwing up all the time. The chemotherapy that
waste
she's
away.
going through won't be killing her. You know, quality of life and extending your life. I mean, that just seems like a much better option than what you know, a lot of chemotherapy offers.
Yeah, for sure. My dad, my father was helped a lot by the straight CBD oil as well. That worked out really well for him. We were,
Nice.
we were able to get some of the really early, you know, across the state stuff. So that was really awesome. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, just, was gonna say I was really excited. We were talking about seeds and cloning earlier. I managed to get a male of one of those heavy CBD strains, and we flowered it out about a week ago, and I have a bunch of pollen from that strain sitting in my freezer, which is really nice. So
Nice.
once we have a really nice female, we can, you know, try again if there's an issue.
Cool.
Yeah, it's always good to have some really good CBD pollen around. It's hard to come by, for sure.
Yeah, I had a couple of lamb's breath seeds that I popped, and both of them turned out to be male. But I just transplanted them to some soil pots and moved them outside since nobody's flowering this time of year. And so I threw them outside, and I'm going to collect some pollen off of those and probably start just a couple little fun breeding experiments.
There you
So,
go.
so that'd be cool. And then I have probably like a dozen train wreck clones and maybe like, I don't know, 10 or so Shishka berry clones. And I saw that Jack Herer monster clone that I took from in flowering late in the outdoor last year that it's just been going nuts. I mean, I'll post some pictures of it when I get back, but it's really cool to watch that process of them re-vegging and just when you get it just right, they just explode in that second stage, and it's got branches everywhere. So we call it Frankenhair. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, down in Colorado, I've heard of it called monster cropping.
Yeah, monster cropping, monster clones, re-veg clones, however, whatever your term is, I suppose, all means the same thing. Basically, it was a clone taken uh, in probably about 3 weeks into flower, um, and then re-veg, put back into a 24-hour light cycle, and it goes back into a veg stage, and when it does that, it just starts shooting branches out of any bud node that was there, basically. So you actually have to trim some of the branches off, or it will just kind of outgrow itself and get all mangled and tangled. And so and when you get it just right, so when you know, about that, somewhere in that 2 to 3 week range of flower, and you hit that timing just right, when it re-veg, it just really takes off. So like I said, I'll take some pictures of it, but you know, on a plant that's only maybe like, I don't know, this tall, it's probably got like, I don't even know how many branches, like, and I've already cut some off of it. So it's pretty cool to watch that. It's fun to do. I've done it with the Platinum Delight and a few other ones, like my the 2 Platinum Delight outdoors from last year. Those were both monster clones that I had taken from the previous indoor grow, and ran those outside. So that was pretty fun.
So what would happen if you took a clone from that clone that's monster cropping hormonally and then tried to make that like a new mother? Is that plant just going to be completely messed up, or how would that work? Because I've never tried that.
That's what I'm doing right now. The Jack Hare clone that I have was monster cropped, and I'm essentially growing it out like a mother plant and taking clones off of it. So right before I left, I took the first maybe like 3 or 4 cuts off of it. So they're not rooted yet. I don't really know what's going to happen with them, but that's kind of the idea, is that I'm going to try and mom that out and see what happens.
See if it fades or if it stays that way.
Yeah, or even just what happens when it goes back into flower, you know, just what, you know, because I would imagine that the plant is originally going to, or is going to eventually shift back out of that stage and go into a normal vegging stage. So like my Platinum Delights last year outdoor, they started out doing in that sort of re-vegging stage, and then they hit, you know, once they hit the regular veg stage, they just kind of grow out like normal. The original bushing aspect of it kind of fades out. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. But if I keep taking cuts off of it and keep it relatively small, I wonder how long, you know, how long is that window that I can take cuts and at least, you know,
have some benefit,
get a little boost out of it, you know, just a little, even if it's a little better than normal. And I just like experimenting more than anything. So
yeah. You had a question about cloning. Do you want to talk more about that?
That was basically I had a question from somebody on one of my posts about whether or not you can clone in aquaponics, and I do. If you check out the video, I think it's called the Clone Cave. It's on this indoor grow. I think it's labeled 3.0 playlist or something like that. And anyway, if you check out the Clone Cave on there, you'll see that basically my drain out of the beds runs through a long sort of NFT setup, and so that drain just, you know, raises up and down whenever the siphon's on or off. So and then it drains back into the fish tank, and then I have just little 3-inch net pots in the top of that PVC, and I just cut them and stick them in there, make sure the bottoms hit the water, and that's all I do. So
and that's AP water?
What's that?
That's AP water you're using?
Yep. AP water. And I do notice that sometimes at first I get some yellowing on the leaves, and then I just wait it out, and the plant that seems to do fine. But I do make sure that I get, you know, normal cloning stuff. I get a nice good 45 cut on the stem when I cut it and all that kind of stuff. But I don't dip it in anything. I don't change anything. I just make sure that the stem gets down into the water, down through the net pot, and has a little bit of media there. And it probably does take longer, you know, probably takes more like 2 weeks or so to get them to root. I'll have to check and see when I uploaded the first video of that, when I cut those first set of clones, and get a better idea of how long it took. But probably takes closer, in my experience, takes closer to about 2 weeks for them to root, as opposed to, you know, you can, you know, with a cloning solution, you can probably in, you know, 7 days or so start seeing your first roots. So it takes a little longer, but doesn't cost you anything, and you don't have to add any newts or mix anything or have anything on hand. And so usually when I go through and start cleaning out like the underneath parts of plants, stuff that I normally throw away. I just cut them for clones and stick them in there. And or if I top plants, those are a lot of times the clones that I end up keeping around when I first top plants. So that was just one of the questions that I had on one of my posts, and so I wanted to talk about it today. I don't know, you clone with aquaponic water?
I don't. I've actually, when I worked back at the aquaponics source, I've done a ton of peppers, tomatoes, and other stuff where we just stuck them underneath where the water flows into the bed. So it's getting a little more water than it normally would, just so they don't get any embolism in them. And they, I would say the majority of the time they would do that, especially whenever I had to prune back any of the little dwarf fruit trees and stuff. That seemed to do really well. But I've tried it a couple of times with cannabis, and kind of I feel like I've lost a few more than when I've done cloning with clean water and putting them in either rapid rooters or a little bit of soil or a little bit of a rock wool or whatever any of the generic Jiffy pots or whatever. But I actually have some I'm testing right now. I have a couple in rock wool, a couple in Jiffy pots, and a couple in the rapid rooters, and we're going to see which one roots quicker. I was hoping to do a whole video thing on that, but with me leaving on shorter notice than intended, I don't know if I'll have time to finish it, but I'm going to try and take as much as I can, or if not, maybe I'll bring a few cubes with me and I'll just try to restart the whole thing down there.
Yeah, I was wondering, you might want to, I don't know, what kind of access you're going to have to plants down there too. I think that's one of the things that that people that haven't done larger grows before don't really realize what it's like to try and get 500 plants together. Like just the sheer number of that. Taking care of them, finding them. A lot of people get there. Like here, you get 4 plants for recreational or 6 plants for medical, and so and you can do both. At least currently, you can have a medical, and for each street address, you can have your 4 recreational. So, but that's maximum 10 plants, and so obviously you can hit up your buddy for some clones, or you can pop some seeds, or you can all these different things. But when you need that number of plants, it can you pretty much kind of need your own sort of situation set up for either sprouting seeds or for doing that. So
yeah, that's something we actually have at one of the farms that we're working at down there. We have a warehouse, and we're just going to set that up, and it's going to be the one indoor grow that we have, and it's going to be just mothers and just young clones. And then once they're big enough, but then this way I don't have to seed. I have to seed for males, which saves me a ton of labor time in the field out in the sun, which sucks, and it sucks for everybody else that I have to work with. And 2, I can get genetic stability, and I can do real good consistency on my potency. You know what I mean? Like all my stuff's going to be much closer to a monocrop, since cannabis hasn't been stabilized down to the point of like corn or onions or soybeans or whatever, where you can get 1,000 of a variety and all of it's going to be the same. The phenomes are still all over the place with cannabis, and no one, except for maybe someone that's behind closed door pharmaceutical stuff, has those genetics down to where they're completely stable, and 10 seeds are going to crack and look basically the same. They don't have it down yet, because it hasn't been an agricultural product in the way that we have treated other agricultural products. It'll get there, but that may or not be a good thing either. You know what I mean?
Right.
You will see, super heavy production like CBG, CBN, THCV, and some of these other like more important individual cannabinoids, or even some of the terpenes. You're going to see them developing like super strains with some of these stuff in the future. But for now, they're still not there. So, we'll be able to keep our really good genetics. And then the other nice thing is that, if there's a hurricane or something else comes through the island, I don't lose everything. I can kind of make that place Fort Knox, and at least even if everything else gets destroyed, I can come in, I can, just maul the crap out of my mothers, and we can get going in a couple of weeks again. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, what are your daylight hours there? That's going to be different than what you're growing here too. Like for outdoor, that's going to be
Yeah, here, so it's about 11 and 3/4 to 13 and a half hours, I think it is.
Right.
Um,
So it's
something like.
tough for the plant to even get into veg outside there, from what I understand, right?
Well, so they'll grow up to about waist high most of the time, and then they'll flower. You know, they're not flowering instantly. They'll vet. That's really close to where the plant evolved originally, anyway. So the
Mm-hmm.
plant will veg for a week or two, and then it starts to flower. But you know, it makes it about waist high or shoulder high. You know, it's not
Right.
too often you see any that are about head high, except for some of the sativas. But you can if you plant now. So if you plant in like February or March, um, they'll, because the summer is coming into the longer part when it goes into the 13, it'll keep them in that veg state a little longer. And then when they flip, you harvest late a little bit later.
Right. Or like you're doing, you're going to be able to veg plants inside and get them taller before you put them outside.
Well, we're not going to do a whole lot of vegging. The main point is that we can get production consistency. You know, we don't necessarily, I don't really need to veg. We don't really have a plant count as far as I'm aware in any of my paperwork. So we can just cut and cut and cut and cut and cut and, you know, plant out whatever the crop field is that we need to, or, you know, whatever we need to fill out is not really a big deal.
Right. So you'll start out doing a pheno hunt, right? You'll pop
Yeah.
a bunch of seeds. For those people that don't know what a pheno is, you know, every seed has a slightly different genetic variation, right? So when you pop different seeds, you look for the ones that have the best traits, that do the best. And so, you know, like in big research places like Amsterdam and in the UK and stuff like that, they have huge, I mean, they sprout hundreds of seeds and only keep like 5. So that's definitely, you know, something that I think that it is important for a lot of people that have questions about whether or not they want to do seeds versus if they want to get clones. So clones, you pretty much know what you're going to get. You don't have to worry about mixing your plants at all. It's a lot easier for beginners. Must be Steve's phone. So clones are a lot easier for beginners. You know what you're going to get. You don't have to worry about getting males. Flower room.
Sorry about that, guys.
It's all right. I think somebody's calling you. So I was just talking about how, you know, the differences between seed and clone. How seeds, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. Going to have to sex your plants. Clones sometimes can be a little easier for beginners. So looks like you got some there.
So this is a pheno hunt. So this seedling came out variegated, which is not going to be very successful long term.
But really cool looking.
Yeah, it's really pretty, but it's not going to last long. This is a really, really nice, bushy, heavy CBD strain. This is like what you want. This is a really, really good one for just, you know, a month-old seedling. It's not too bad. And then this one over here, you know, this guy is not what you want. So that's why I do a pheno hunt. Now this other one will keep. This one we're just going to keep around. It's going to end up dying in the next month, it looks like. So we'll just keep it around long enough for it to look cool. But
Some variegated plants you can get to flower, and I've seen some really cool variegated buds.
oh yeah, especially if you have really high-powered lights on them, then buds turn just bright white. They almost don't even look like bud anymore. Looks
Yeah,
like some other drug or something.
yeah, it's pretty cool looking. So while so while you don't really know what you're going to get with seeds, that's kind of a nice thing. Like you can see sometimes you get um, different growth patterns that are nice. You get more vigorous growth out of seeds pretty much overall. You get a more symmetrical plant, I guess, in the way that it grows, as opposed to a clone of a branch doesn't grow as symmetrical.
Yeah. But the that's the one nice thing about blowing from clones is that, you know, you get all the different consistencies. You know, you don't have anywhere near as much variation unless you heat stress them, really starve them of water, you know, give them too much wind, or, you know, some other stress factor.
Right. And so basically what you're going for down there is going to be essentially both. You're going to do a pheno hunt for the phenos that you want, and then clone that pheno as to be able to have your stability and know what you're going to get, so you don't end up with males in the field or have to check any of that stuff.
Plus here in Colorado now, as of this year, it's legal. You can send out, there's a couple of different places in the state where you can send out your bud. And an example of this is why that's great now to get testing. For $40, you can get your bud tested and get your full well, not full, but you can get a decent cannabinoid profile off of it. And I could, when I'm doing a phenome hunt, I could just send out my first clone that I cut off of it, that I flower out. You know, I'll smoke a little bit of it, but then I'll send it out. And then if it sucks, I'll just trash it. You know, I'll just juice it and then the heck with it. You know, or I'll feed it back to the tilapia. They love the leaves.
Nice.
My plecos really like them too. So I've actually been stocking up on a few more plecos because they seem to maul through them, and my phosphates seem to boost a little bit more. So.
Right.
So that's been really fun to do. But so yeah, that's the one nice thing about being in a legal state or in Colorado. I could just drive down, drop my stuff off at this testing place, and, you know, a couple of days later they call me and tell me how nice or bad it is, and then I know whether or not to chuck it, and then I'll keep that around for my production strain, which is really nice. You know, if you're in a non-legal state, or even in a medical state, you know, definitely look at Colorado's laws and regarding that, and see about using it as or modifying it and introducing it to your own legislature to try and get this stuff pushed. You know, if we're going to have stuff production, you know, on the mass scale, we need to have these testing facilities in place, because we need to know what the, you know, quality of the product, first of all, but second of all, we also need to make sure that all these dudes are also getting pesticide testing, so that we know that we're getting healthy medicine. And that's become a problem more often, and Colorado and Oregon have really taken the helm on trying to bring in the reins and making sure that nobody's smoking anything that's going to give them cancer on their plants that's not, you know, pesticides and all kinds of other crap. That should be bad. You know, you do need to use pest control methods at times, but both Colorado and Oregon now have approved lists. And if it's not on that list and they find it, they're pulling your product, and they'll shut down they'll pull your dispensary license. They can make your life hell. So.
Right. Actually, in Oregon here, you have to have basically you display your product with the test most of the time. Like pretty much all the dispensaries have just taken to putting the test right there with it, so that you can look it over before you purchase it. That's pretty standard. Some of them have like a little book on the counter where you can kind of flip through them or whatever, but everything that's on the shelf, they have to have the results for the actual consumer to be able to look at themselves too. So that's kind of a neat thing. I don't know if that's required or if that's just what everybody started doing, because pretty much every dispensary has.
In Colorado, it's required for recreational, and I don't think it's yet required. Well, I'll tell you, let me look at the stuff I just bought recently. It's still not required for medical, but I think that they're trying to make it required for medical to have have everything tested before it hits the market. Actually, you had a follow-up about Oregon's extraction stuff, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, they got a huge amount of feedback, obviously negative feedback around a number of different,
just a little bit.
A number of different extractors, legitimate extraction businesses that had been operating in some cases for quite a long time, that had a number of employees and were essentially being totally shut down by the legislation we talked about on the last episode. And so in response to that, they have come out with a I don't know if it's an amendment or what exactly the details are, but I can tell you that there will be after the 1st of April, they're going to start accepting in processing the applications for the licenses for extractors. And rather than basing the legislation around when you actually get your license, they are giving provisional licenses to everybody who applies. So as of the 1st, at least production will be able to start again, and all of those people will not be Class B felons. And so that will at least set up a process for people to be able to continue to go through, and then hopefully, they'll start getting their actual licenses. And if you get turned down for your license, then it's revoked until you apply again after fixing whatever else you have. So at least there's a mechanic there that should work, and there's something in place that makes it a little bit better.
So they're allowing retail sale again, or?
Yeah, so dispensaries will be able to buy from anybody who has a provisional permit. So after you apply, you get the provisional permit until you get denied, and then if you're denied, then you lose your provisional permit. And dispensaries will, because every dispensary got like this notice in the mail that says, basically you can't buy anything until people get registered. And so now they got a new flyer in the mail that says, you'll be able to, people will have provisional permits after they get applied. And so, I mean, at least they responded and did something about it. It would have been nice if they would have listened in the first place to the number of people that told them that this was a bad idea. But at least we know that, if nothing else, it shows us that, if we speak up, then they will have to listen at some point. And that's really what happened here. Was so many people talked to so many legislators that they were overwhelmed. I know our governor's office was essentially, their phones were shut down because they were getting so many calls. People were getting all circuits are busy when they were trying to call. And so that's a good thing. I think that it at least shows that on some level that people can flex their power and still be heard.
For sure. And that's one thing I want to bring up too, is that for all you people that are in non-legalized states yet, or people with just medical, like, we're getting all the crappy part of the paperwork through the handful of states that are legal right now. They're working out all the legislation, the architecture for production, getting this pesticide testing done. I know Oregon, I think, was the first one to start doing pesticide testing on concentrates as well for retail sale, because if you're concentrating something that's in a plant and there's a lot of a pesticide on it, you're also concentrating the pesticide. So depending on how they're extracting it, so that's also a problem that apparently is as of this year. I know the Emerald Cup in California and what's the new, or not? It's not new, but what's the big hash one?
I don't know.
In Northern Cali as well, or out there. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. But yeah, so that's something else that, you might not have it legalized yet, or you might only have medical, but, there's not always, people have been smoking pesticide-laden concentrates for a couple of years now, and no one realized it, which is not good either. So, working out some of these kinks in the laws so that you guys have model legislation to build your own state's legalization laws on is all a hard, long process, and it takes a while. And don't expect that when your place gets legalized that it's just going to be a smooth road, because it's not. It's going to have some bumps. It's going to piss you off once in a while. Oregon's case in point. But
Washington. I mean, Washington is a shit show right now.
But yeah, Washington's really bad too.
It's terrible. Or Florida's medical. I mean, there's plenty of examples of ways in which legalization, even on the medical side, has been essentially halted, even though the people have voted for it, know that they want it. I mean, Florida dragged their feet for years and years before it could even get off the ground. So the most important thing, I think, is who your legislators are.
Sure.
However you vote to create your laws is one thing, but you have to remember that all of those laws are going to be shaped by legislators. and they will come up with ways, like they came up with ways to screw people here in Oregon, and ways that they came up to screw people in Florida, to where if you don't have the proper legislators in place, then you're not going to get the result that you want, regardless of how you vote for the laws independently. So some people think that they can just, vote for what they want to happen in terms of laws, and still be able to support legalization in that way. But if you just vote on one half of it, then you're really just sort of giving away the power to somebody else. And in this case, in Oregon, we voted through the legislation that we wanted, but our legislators kind of screwed up implementing it. And that can be on multiple levels. Every level matters, whether it's in our case right now, where what I deal with the most is Jackson County. Our county legislators have been terrible. So our Jackson County board has misinterpreted what our state legislators originally put forth. So they have essentially banned outdoor growing in all of Jackson County if you're on residential zone land. So that's just one of the examples of how each one of those levels matters. And I think that the most important level, we talked about this before too, was the most important level starts right at the top. And there's some presidential candidates out there right now that have some pretty scary stance on on legalization or lack thereof. Like Christie wants to arrest all of us because we don't have any self-control.
Yep. Yeah, no, if Trump wins and he puts Christie in as attorney general or even VP, man, they're coming after the weed industry hardcore. Like, if you're in the weed industry right now or the cannabis industry, you're out of a job if he gets elected. They're going to come in guns blazing to shut out everything because they're absolutely clueless. They don't care about how many people it helps. They don't care about anything. They don't care about all the tax money, how much school money has gone to Colorado, how much money has gone to the Colorado's medical program for people that don't have money to go to the hospitals. That all gets paid for out of the cannabis fund. You know how much money we had out of the cannabis taxes? It qualified under the windfall tax because it was such a surplus that they were supposed to give money back to the taxpayers. The taxpayers voted to send it back to the schools, which was awesome. Right. We voted for both of those things because we know it was right, and that's what that money was generated for. Show me another way to generate millions of dollars for the schools like that. Show me. It doesn't exist. Or the medical, for paying medical bills and everything else. It's a great way to subsidize it. Plus, all the money that's saved in the court system and everything else is that if somebody has a drug problem, they have a drug problem. That's a health issue, not a criminal issue. The longer we keep fighting this, the more money we're pissing away for no reason, and ruining lives and everything else.
Right. And what I find almost personally irritating is that income that's made that way, or taxes that are paid that way, are still treated so much differently than like corporate profit. You know what I mean? It's like, why is it that you're fine with some rich guy getting richer and not paying any taxes because he jumps through loopholes, or we give him tax breaks on purpose because he'll create jobs and then never creates jobs? Like, why is it that you're not just as willing to tax those people as you are to tax us, who are for the most part just growers? I mean, there's really not that much to it. Like, why do you have? I'm fine if you want me to pay my taxes and whatever, and that stuff goes to schools. I'm great with that. Like, I got no issue with that. But why you want your other way to do it? That's the other way to do it, right? I mean, there's a huge amount of income that's not being taxed anywhere near the amount that we are.
Well, not even that. The feds are happy to take my income tax for my salary that I'm making working for a cannabis company, but I can't use a bank and get a federally backed $100,000 bank account for the company. This is insane. They're more than happy to take the tax money, but they won't do that. It's just stupid. Like,
right. And then they'll also turn around and Apple pay zero taxes. Like, how does Apple pay no taxes at all? Like, how do huge corporations that have record profits pay almost no taxes at all, and everybody's fine with it? But yet, every Republican in the world wants to throw every tax possible on that. We talked about this last time about how why why is there such a difference? How, like, you all of a sudden, are in favor of regulation and taxes and bigger government as soon as it turns into a cannabis grow, but everything else in the world you want them to leave alone and not touch and not tax, so it creates jobs. What about all the jobs that we create? Nobody cares about that. That industry is not just creating money and revenue. You have dispensaries open with employees, you have funded growers, you have grow hands, you have people working in grow shops.
Packaging, you have the fertilizer companies, the equipment companies, the lighting companies, the electricians, the people that sell all the paper for the receipts. I mean, people that do all the advertising. They do not even that. There's another great thing. The cannabis industry, if you're in a medical state with liberal medical card laws, or in a recreational state, you know what you have? You have a newspaper industry that's still surviving. You know why? Because every single page is a full-page cannabis bud ad saying, come this week and get your whatever special of whatever bud is they have a ton of. Straight up. Colorado, I live in a pretty small town in Colorado outside Boulder, okay? And we have this little town here, we probably have less than 40 or 50,000 people, has its own newspaper with just the town's news. Show me another small town in America like that still has a super authority. Not only that, there's 5 different newspapers that are all just on the Front Range here, within 50 miles. There's all these little towns that have their little newspapers, and there's Boulder Weekly, a whole bunch of other publications, and all of them are supported by free or all the cannabis industry. And all the people that work at those magazines, all the people that do the advertising, the graphic design, people don't realize it creates a whole web of an economy around itself in a way that very few other products do. And that doesn't even include the hemp. Anyone in a medical state, a lot of the medical states now do hemp production. So, and that's an even more useful product.
Right. Yeah, we haven't even touched on him. We'll probably have to hit that in the next episode. Do you have I can't see on this side, or I don't know how to see anyway. Do we have some live listeners this time? Can we go to some questions?
Yeah, any of the live people have any questions? There was 3 a minute ago. Looks like there's 1 at the moment. See if there's any. You type in chat here.
We see you. Who's there?
So the other thing I wanted to touch on too, while we're waiting for our guests, see if anybody has any questions, is so the Supreme Court tossed out the challenge to Amendment 64. Wyoming, Kansas, and I think it was Utah, or Wyoming, and was it just Wyoming and Kansas? Or what? I forget what 2 states. It was 2 or 3 states sued Colorado for Amendment 64 for failure to uphold federal law, and some other thing, and then sued them because it created undue burden on their law enforcement and something else. And the Supreme Court tossed it. Well, first off, it was ruled in the lower court as just they were going to throw it out, and then they appealed it to the Supreme Court. And then they appealed it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court tossed it. So that's a huge victory in the cannabis legalization, assuming we don't get a President Trump or Chris Christie as Attorney General. But assuming we can get somebody, ideally Bernie Sanders, who's the only person who's gone out and talked about cannabis legalization and talked about the horrors of the ridiculous war they've been fighting.
Well, he's also introduced legislation to make it federally legal. Like, he's already drafted it and put it up. Obviously, it didn't go through, but
try.
Yeah, and so he's not only said the right stuff, but he's actually taking steps to get it done.
Yeah. So to us,
feel the burn.
Yeah, but that was a big victory for us this week on that front.
Yeah, I'm really glad that they got thrown out, and I guess on that note too, do you feel like, would it have gone the same way if Scalia was still there?
Yeah, that's another one. Well,
I don't know.
I don't think one judge can decide to take it. I think it has to be a majority of the judges decide to take the case. I
But I think
actually
he affected
figured
other judges. I think that he, obviously his, anytime you have somebody has that extreme of a point of view, they tip the scales on the,
oh yeah, I
yeah,
mean that guy was horrendous as far as like some of his opinions he put out there were so just racist and bad in many ways. There's no real other word for it. There really
yeah.
isn't.
I just think it's an interesting question. Would it have gone the same way if Scalia was still there? Because he had the, obviously the extreme opinion in the other way, and did that influence anybody else? Because obviously there were other things that I wouldn't have thought that he would have been able to influence that I think he did, like Citizens United and
Oh yeah, which
things
is
like
the
that.
worst thing that ever happened in the U.S.
Right. So anyway, I think that's interesting. But yeah, I think other than that, I think that if you support the cannabis industry and legislation, there's really only one candidate, and that's Bernie Sanders. Obviously there are a lot of different issues, but in terms of this particular issue on cannabis legalization, he's really the only one that has anything to say with any sort of merit, in my opinion.
Sure. Hillary has said she wouldn't legalize weed, so fuck her.
Right, and then on top of that, she's always been in favor of big prison money and taking big prison money and voted for big prison money. So I think that follow the money, you figure it out.
Yep,
And
GF Group has been one of our biggest supporters.
right, and so as far as legalization goes, I mean, obviously she's got plenty of other qualifications, and that's not the only thing that matters for being president. But I do think that it matters more than what a lot of these other candidates think it does. And so not only do I align with Bernie on a number of other issues, but for this one, in this particular instance, he really is sort of the only one.
So what do you like for fish food?
I basically I go to my local co-op, and they have it's just like a koi pond feed that's relatively high in phosphorus and it's relatively cheap. I think it's like $16 for a 10-pound bag or something like that, and that's what I use. And then probably like a couple of times a week, I let my son pick through the worm bin and throw worms to the catfish. That's one of his favorite things to do. He has a lot of fun digging through and finding the big worms and tossing them in there. He'll just go and go and go for probably, like, I have to stop and be like, okay, that's enough. Don't want to get too much feed in there.
Yeah.
And so that's great too. But that's pretty much the only stuff that I feed. Do you have a preference on your?
Right now I've just been feeding between a generic cichlid pellet that I got, just found online. It's like, I forget how much it was. It was like $30 for a 20-pound bag. It was not too bad, and like 33% protein and decent phosphorus, and similar to what I had, but it was a little more for cichlids. And then I like to give them lettuce a lot, and I give them pot leaves and leaf scraps. They actually really love pepper leaves. That's one of their favorites. So that's another one I really like to give them on the regular. They seem to really enjoy. I don't know if they just like the spiciness or what, but it's just one they seem to like. And then the other thing I'll give them as a treat sometimes. If I remember at the grocery store, I'll get them a thing of minced or chopped pineapple chunks, and they really go nuts for that. And it's also a good sugar input, especially in flour. You're putting a little bit of sugar water in there, boosting those microbes, especially late in flour when you're trying to just clear out the system, get rid of residuals. It's a great way to help make everything available and give your fish a nice little treat and watch them just go ballistic. They just love them. Grapes is another one that, I get grapes all the time, but sometimes I forget them in the back of the fridge. And if they start to get a little weird, I'll put them downstairs and they'll strip a whole top of it in about 45 seconds. They'll just, it's like piranhas. It's kind of nuts.
Nice. That's cool.
But
Well, I think we're gonna have to wrap it up. My battery's about to die, and I don't know where my charger is. So.
Yeah, actually, I've supposed to be getting ready for Dude Grows show here in a couple of minutes. I'll be over on the Dude Grows show. I don't know if it'll be today or Monday or Wednesday or whenever they decide to plop it in there. But definitely look for me on there. And yeah, so I'll be in Jamaica next week. We'll figure out how the internet situation is for the next episode, and then we'll make sure we try to post it a day or two beforehand this next time, so that people know a little more than the short notice we had this time. But yeah, and definitely be sure to check out my channel, which is Ponics on YouTube, and you can email me at potentponics@gmail.com if you have any questions. And then definitely I'll let Marty talk about his channel too.
Yeah, mine is APMeds, so you can look me up on there, and on YouTube, and then in the Facebook groups. My name is Marty Waddell. You can look me up on Facebook, message me on there. The aquaponics groups, we have the aquaponic cannabis group on Facebook that Steve's put together, and so yeah, hit us up on any of those places. And we'll have we usually upload the podcast to both of our channels, so you can check it out on either one. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, and if you guys have any other questions or any topics or anything else you guys want us to cover regarding aquaponics, cannabis growing, and specifically, or even some of the other stuff that's generally cannabis industry related, since both Marty and I are involved in the cannabis industry to different degrees, definitely let us know, and we'll do our best to answer them, or if not, we'll get you the answer. So thanks for joining us, and we'll hope to see you guys again next time. Cheers, and be sure to hit subscribe on both Marty's channel and mine.
See you guys.